Hey now, it's been a little bit since I've had an update on PaperCut for you. And that's because they've been busy. There's a whole lot of stuff that's right around the corner that I'm just itching to tell you about, but everything has a season. And 'tis the time to talk about the latest release from PaperCut, version 20.1. And I'm going to talk about it in depth. I'm Doc Balgi, subject matter expert for ACDI. Pleased to have you along. We'll have a Q&A session right after this as well, so stick around. Let's take the plunge. Mobility print. Over 3 years old and just keeps getting better as now Windows users can print through the cloud. No longer tethered to the local network. Now, this is the same mobility print that you can get for free from the PaperCut.com website and is the premier replacement for Google Cloud Print. You know, we've been talking about this for over a year, but good to bring it up again. Google Cloud Print has been in beta for over 10 years and will be deprecated at the end of this year. Since this is being recorded in the middle of November, and that only really gives someone about a month and a half to figure out a solution, maybe about 20 business days or so. And if they ask you, you should recommend Mobility Print. They can start with the free version and add PaperCut NG or MF if they're looking for authentication, tracking, and reporting. Mobility Print has always been used in a local network, enabling users with any type of BYO device to easily connect and print. Well, what's new then? Actual cloud printing with Chromebooks, both managed and BYOD, plus just announced cloud print for Windows. Why is this so awesome? Well, let me explain. I'll start with the approach for printing from the cloud. Then we'll talk about configuring Windows devices, as that has just been released in beta. We'll go over some technical details and then some troubleshooting tips. Mobility Print's addition of Windows Cloud Printing is very cool for a lot of reasons. Let's start with the WebRTC protocol. This is the same technology that Google Meet and other video conferencing software is using. It is all part of the intelligent routing of print jobs that happens behind the scenes. Jobs will go directly from the Windows computer to the server whenever possible, always allowing for the fastest connection. The print data is encrypted end to end, and if your job goes through a Google server, no one, not even PaperCut, can access your print jobs. This is native Windows printing, so there's really no learning curve for end users. They file print as normal. Sharing printers is as easy as using a slider switch in the Mobility Admin console. Mobility Print is also one of the products that PaperCut continuously updates, so you're always at the latest version of Mobility Print, no matter what version of PaperCut you're on. And jobs are fast due to that WebRTC protocol. Windows Cloud Print is only accessible via the Windows Invite link page, which makes this ultra secure since you just can't log in. You need to be invited to join the party. This part of mobility is only for Cloud Print. Soon it'll be rolled out for the other install methodologies, MDNS, DNS-SD, and known host. And currently, this will work alongside the local existing Windows mobility client. So if you've already got Mobility Print set up, you really don't have to change anything to add cloud printing to the device. Just go through the invitation process and you'll be all set. Sounds pretty easy, and it's also pretty exciting. So it should, because it is. Let's see how we configure it. As mentioned, this new Windows client print can be used with the standalone free version from PaperCut, so you can actually try this and use it free of charge. I mentioned earlier that it works with any version of PaperCut. Let's clarify that to 17.0.3 and higher, as that's when Mobility Print was first introduced. For Windows Cloud to work, you'll need to be at Mobility Print Server version 1.0.2580 or greater. With continuous delivery, and if you're connected to the internet, then you should be well past that already. Finally, you'll need to have access to the Mobility Print admin page so that you can generate the link or links that are necessary. There's a way to roll this out with an MSI package if you're in an enterprise environment using group policy, and there's a new easy-to-use client setup page as well. This all runs in the background, takes up very few resources, and also auto-updates. I want to reiterate, this is the installer for Windows Cloud Print, not for a local installation. That's coming your way pretty soon. To generate the link, you simply access the new Mobility Print admin page and navigate to Cloud Printing. This is where you generate the link. All you do is name it, put an expiration date if you want, and really that's it. End user will open the link up where the setup page will guide them through the installer, and they're done. They'll be ready to use Cloud Print in a minute or two. To print, it's file, print, and off it goes, all wrapped up and encrypted. You may be asked for credentials if you're using PaperCut with Mobility Print. The free version does not ask for authentication as it's not tracking or holding the jobs, they just print. Again, no learning curve for end users. It's all printing as normal, even if they are at their local cafe and not on the local network. What's going on behind the scenes, you ask? Well, let's take a look. When you enable Mobility Print for the first time, the server registers with Cloud Print Services. This can take a couple of minutes to register, so just make sure to give it a moment or two. Then, while you're in the Mobility Print admin console, generate the link by providing a friendly name for the link, and optionally, you can add an invite link expiration and/or a printing expiration. You can also generate more than one if your use case requires it. End user will then open the link on their Windows computer and it talks to the cloud services. PaperCut services will then check with the local Mobility Print server and obtain a list of the activated printers. If you've used Mobility Print in the past, then you know it's just a slider switch that you activate in order for that specific printer to show up in Mobility Print. Then the process will automatically install the necessary printers on the local computer. They will be ready as soon as the install has completed. When the user does a file print, the Mobility client will then talk to the cloud services to see if the local printers are available or if the job needs to route through the cloud server. Using WebRTC, the job will take the fastest route, which means that if they're on the local network, the job will print straight away to the device. Of course, everything just works as normal, but not everything is normal, so here's some tips if you're having a little trouble. First, check Mobility Print Server's Cloud Print connection. Then check out the firewall rules in the Help Center. That's now called the Product Manual, by the way. Same for print deploy, job ticketing, and some future products. Make sure the end user has actually opened the link that was sent to them and has gone through the setup page instructions all the way to the end so that they've launched Mobility Print. If support is looking for logs, then you'll find server logs in the Mobility Print client folder in Program Files. End user logs will be in the hidden app data folder, so make sure you have that folder visible. Wow! Cloud Print for Windows using Mobility Print. How cool is that? Easy to set up and use, of course. And you can check it out for free. Why don't you give it your own test drive? Print Deploy is another product with continuous delivery, and very soon you will see a new Linux client pop up as a client. It's just about ready, so we're going to tell you about it now. This client will support Ubuntu and Debian using a .deb file for the installer. Also, this is only for 64-bit computers. Red Hat systems will be addressed shortly. Here's a screenshot of the Print Deploy admin page and the location of the Debian client installer. It's right next to Chrome, Mac, and Windows. In case you haven't seen Print Deploy in a while, this screenshot also shows the new look of the zones, and easy-to-get-to settings for the client are directly available on this page now as well. As to the installation of the client, take note that the server info is located within the brackets of the file name. Alternatively, you can use the environment variable server_host if the server information isn't available in the file name. To run the client, simply use the application launcher, search for PaperCut Print Deploy Client if you don't see the mobility print icon right away. And the other way to run the client is by using the system tray icon. However, this may not be available by default. The recommendation is to use the application launcher as we just saw. This client will look like all the other operating systems and will provide the ability to add designated printers on demand, as well as automatically install specific printers for the location that you're in. There are a few mega tech companies that we're all very familiar with, Google being one of them, so why not add a sign in with Google button? Okay, this should show up pretty soon as well, and wanted to announce it here, all part of continuous delivery of PaperCut products. Now you'll be able to use Google credentials for Print Deploy if you want, making it easier for users since they probably already use that login with many other devices. The Print Deploy client needs to be set for prompt in the TOML file, and under auth methods, simply add Google in quotes. Username will enable other username password authentication like Active Directory. Some changes will need to be made on the Google admin page. Check the product manual for all of these details. And there is a client secret that will need to be created, and you'll need to create a new TOML file for that and restart the Print Deploy server. You don't need to do the entire app server for this to take effect. Now, the Continue with Google button will show up in the Print Deploy client window, allowing you to access your user account and log in. You'll receive a success page, and you're ready to go. You can have multiple authentication methods turned on to make it even easier for end users to authenticate as well. Adjusting the TOML file with both Google and username will provide this prompt, enabling printing for users by allowing them to choose their favorite method. That is, as long as the admin allows them to. We're still diving and dropping in on some info regarding load balancers and cloud deployments. There are ports that are static in PaperCut and ports that cannot be changed. Or I should say ports that can be changed. I just said the other ones were static. So the application server itself can be run on any customized port and can also include 80 and 443. Print Deploy runs on 9173 and 9174, period. So we may need to change, if you will, the ports for proxy servers, load balancers, SSL termination services, that type of thing, where Print Deploy still runs and listens on 9173 and 9174, but the Print Deploy server tells the client and cloners to communicate via custom TLS SSL ports like 443, for instance. Now, why would we need to do this? Well, take a look at the use cases here. There are times when the customer has other measures in place and they need the software to conform to their enterprise, not the other way around. Here we have another TOML file that's easily modified to provide the necessary port info for Print Deploy. You'll notice here that the file names will now have the port appended for communication, and all will be well in this network. No need to reconfigure the clients if they're already deployed. They'll pick up the new configuration the next time they call in. Larger networks may want to segment this out to ease the burden on their system. Another print deploy feature that is just on the horizon, it'll just show up with continuous delivery too. Really excited about it, bulk zone creation. Even enterprise customers have been finding out that print deploy is easy to set up and easy to use. So now configuring your zones is even easier with the ability to upload the info via CSV and have print deploy do all the work for you. As you can see by the animation, it's just a few clicks to browse to where your spreadsheet is, and you're off and running. Here are the steps to this process. The admin will simply download the template from the print deploy admin UI, populate the data needed for the zones, and then drag and drop the file into the UI. There will be a quick validation process in which the admin can correct any errors and re-upload the file if necessary, and then the newly created zones will be displayed, ready for use. The only necessary element in the spreadsheet is the zone name, and it needs to be unique. You won't be able to create a new zone if a zone with the same name already exists in print deploy or in the file that you're uploading. You can also add the friendly zone name, IP range, and user groups. Just note, if they're blank, the system will assume all. So it would be all IP ranges and all user groups. Now let's move into the new features in PaperCut version 20.1, the first being Spool file encryption. Spool file encryption, now available for Windows servers. And it's using cryptography API Next Generation, or CNG for short. The files are encrypted using AES 256 GCM, which has built-in authentication. Now, this assures the encrypted data isn't tampered with, and that's validated during the decryption. Multi-part keys are used for the encryption secret key. And the original file and the encrypted file size are the same. Plus, encryption is done while the spool file is being generated by the printer driver for better efficiency. Let's see how direct printing works. This is kind of the usual setup for like a personal use of printers at home. When a file is printed, it goes through a printer driver, which then generates a spool file. A spool file includes the document as well as instructions on how the printer should print it. And in this case, the spool file is directly sent to the printer and it gets discarded right away. Now let's look at the other scenario. This is called hold and release, a typical setup in an office. So when a document is printed, it is sent to a print server where the spool file is generated. The spool file is then held in this print server until the print job is released. Now, this screenshot shows the actual files in the server. SHD is the spool file header. This enables the print job to be resumed when a print job is paused or in error. SPL file is the spool file that is sent to the server. Anyone who has access to these spool files can copy them, and there are tools to convert the spool files to another document such as PDF, or you can simply reprint them. Well, with the release of 20.1, a new option is now available for encryption in the PaperCut MF admin console. And when this is enabled, we still have the same setup and everything is as usual. The only difference is now the spool files are encrypted. And this is how they look on the server. The spool files in the original spool folder are zeroed out. And that's to ensure that the Windows print system is not confused for missing spool files. The actual spool files are now encrypted and moved to the PaperCut's encrypted folder. We don't need to encrypt the SHD files, as no information about your original documents can be compromised from those files. To set up encryption, you need at least Windows Server 2012, You'll set the print queues to hold and release, and then printer in error, or PIE, that's a PaperCut acronym, must be enabled. This is to ensure unencrypted spool files are not exposed when there's a printer error. Because when a printer is in error and blocking is not enabled, when a print job is released, it will be visible in the spool folder unencrypted and could be compromised. In some installations, the Windows spool file directory is located in a different location other than the C drive. To avoid performance loss when copying files between drives or partitions, you can set the encrypted spool directory in the print provider configuration to the same location. If support is required, encryption debugging can be enabled by using the Enable Encryption Debug flag in the print provider config file. This will generate verbose logging for encryption and creates a copy of the original encrypted and decrypted file for troubleshooting. Many debug messages and errors will be available to help isolate where an error may be occurring. Data integration, another new feature with PaperCut version 20.1. Using data integrations, you can now consume, analyze, and view your organization's usage trends in third-party tools, like ACDI's Storyboard. You can now understand trends of usage over time to make informed decisions to further optimize your print fleet. While there's a little more to the config than this, I wanted to show you the UI. There's essentially 4 elements that can be mapped to the PaperCut interface: the name of your integration, an explanatory text field for your integration, a help link or other info, and the URL for the integrated product. Your customized integration will show up under Reports, Data Integration, and you can click on it from inside this interface to launch your analytics tool. Shown here is my example of the ACDI Storyboard integration. The exported data for Storyboard or other third-party business intelligence software is stored inside of PaperCut. Each year and month will have their own folder. Here we're seeing where the data is stored for August 2020 as an example. Of course, logging is available, always good when you're integrating something so you can troubleshoot it if something goes awry. Many logs are available and are written to help you decipher what the actual problem is, like where the directories are and config file activity. There's many others, but I think you get the idea. When PaperCut tests things, many times it's done in the percolator, where we let stuff brew while getting feedback from users. Being able to use user principal names is just another example of that process. Now, this is out of the percolator and available for anyone to use, because there was a problem in PaperCut when being set up in larger multi-domain sites where there was a potential for usernames to clash across domains. Admins had no easy way to solve this problem using PaperCut, so instead they'd need to change usernames through other means. So we've added UPN username support to PaperCut to separate users by domains. So what does this do? Well, it really offers a really simple way to identify users and which domain they belong to. This phenomena happens quite frequently with larger companies that buy other companies while keeping the technical infrastructure the same. So you may encounter a P. Parker in both domains, and PaperCut typically would join them together as one user. In many cases, we want those users to be separate, and UPN username support is the answer to that. No special drivers are needed. It's all handled within the PaperCut interface now. Under your sync source in the PaperCut admin, you'll see a checkbox to use UPN as the username. A couple of warnings do show up, including forcing on-demand user creation to be set to do not create the user and deny usage. Also, if this is an existing setup, there may be considerations for users that already exist in the system. If you're unsure about what to do, no worries. Just contact ACDI and our professional services team will be glad to assist. Please keep in mind, this is for Active Directory only. G Suite Sync is still in the percolator. If users don't know their UPN, they can still log in by email, and you need to have one print server per domain to make this happen. Finally, if you've been listening to my podcast, What's the Solution?, then you hopefully heard my two-part series with Jamie McClooney at PaperCut regarding Microsoft's new Universal Print. The connector is now baked into PaperCut, so no need to obtain the download and install separately. Universal Print is in beta for Microsoft, so if you're testing it, our connector is included and will allow you to pull username info for secure and find me printing with this new printing protocol. Very excited to see that built in now. And speaking of my podcast, it's available on all of your favorite platforms. Subscribe today. As with all of our social media, if you see something you like, subscribe. Click a button or reshare for others in your network so they can enjoy the content that you like. This wraps it up for today. Certainly hope you got a lot out of this webinar. Always a lot to talk about with a new release. There's a lot of exciting things coming your way. So make sure to stay tuned to ACDI for all things PaperCut and more. This webinar will be posted on the ACDI website shortly. If you're live, then Q&A is coming your way now. Thanks for joining our deep dive technical webinar on PaperCut version 20.1. I'm the doctor for ACDI.